A piercing shriek cut through the morning calm, sharp enough to rattle glass. I glanced up from watering my rose bushes and saw Barbara Higgins, the HOA president, furiously shaking the padlock on my newly installed gate as if she were trying to break free from chains. Her face flushed to the exact deep red hue of my custom diamond pattern driveway, the same one she had attempted to declare common property just 3 weeks before. She stood there in her expensive designer swimsuit and sheer cover-up, pool bag slung over her shoulder, finally realizing that her preferred shortcut to the community pool was now forever closed off. I turned back to my roses, allowing myself the faintest of smiles. Sometimes justice arrives in the simple form of a $20 padlock from the local hardware store. My name is Marcus Vance, and I am a 42-year-old veteran who served 15 years in the Army Corps of Engineers. When I finally settled into the peaceful suburb of Oak Ridge Pines, I believed my days of fighting over territory were long over. I chose a beautiful corner lot home precisely for its distinctive features, including an oversized driveway that curved along the edge of the property. During construction, I had spent an additional $12,000 to install custom red diamond pavers instead of ordinary concrete. The pattern was not merely decorative, it was a personal tribute to my old unit's insignia from my military service. The driveway ran alongside HOA-maintained land that featured a walking path leading to the shared community pool. But every inch of those red diamonds lay squarely within my property lines. Barbara Higgins had moved into the neighborhood 2 years before me and had somehow maneuvered her role as an HOA board member into what felt like personal dominion. At 53, she ruled the community like her own private kingdom, with rules that appeared to shift according to her whims. Her husband rarely spoke. Her 2 grown children visited only during holidays, and she occupied her time by measuring lawn heights with a ruler and snapping photographs of trash cans left out past noon. The day we met, she introduced herself by pointing out that my moving truck had been parked 2 inches over the approved time limit. I should have recognized the warning signs then, but I naively chose to give her the benefit of the doubt. Trouble began 6 months after I moved in. I was working from home when I heard the sharp click-clack of heels on my driveway. Barbara stood there with a clipboard, photographing my pavers from every angle. When I stepped outside to ask what she was doing, she explained in an overly sweet voice that my driveway was under review for multiple violations. According to her, the red diamond pattern breached the neighborhood's uniformity standards. Even worse, she insisted that the driveway encroached on HOA common land. She argued that the distinctive design might confuse delivery drivers or emergency services. Though she could never clarify how red diamonds were more bewildering than plain gray concrete, I responded politely, but firmly that the driveway had been approved by the developer before construction, and that I possessed all required permits. She dismissed my words with a wave of her hand, stating that prior approvals could be revoked if the board found them problematic. When I refused to even entertain the idea of replacing my $12,000 custom driveway with standard concrete, her false smile disappeared. She warned me that the HOA had methods for handling non-compliant homeowners and strutted back down my driveway, deliberately stepping on each paver with her designer heels. The next morning, I discovered a bright orange violation notice taped to my front door. The fine was $200 for unapproved modifications visible from the street. When I peeled it off, another one underneath demanded another $200, this time for creating a potential safety hazard. By the end of the week, I had racked up $1,000 in fines for a driveway that had existed before I even purchased the house. But the fines were only the start of Barbara's campaign. She began treating my driveway as her personal shortcut to the community pool, asserting that since it was under dispute, she had every right to inspect it regularly. Every morning at precisely 9:30, she would march across my red diamonds in her swimsuit and sarong, occasionally dragging the wheels of her pool chair over the pavers. When I installed a small, no trespassing sign, she had it removed within hours, claiming it violated HOA signage regulations. When I confronted her about trespassing on my driveway, she smiled and insisted she was performing official HOA duties by examining the alleged encroachment. She even began bringing other board members along on her daily inspections, turning my driveway into a neighborhood spectacle. One morning, I caught her directing a landscaping truck to park on my pavers while the crew worked on the adjacent common area. When I objected, she replied that the driveway would soon become HOA property anyway, so I might as well get accustomed to it. The conflict escalated when Barbara submitted a formal motion to the HOA board to seize a section of my property as an easement. She argued that the community required a short access to the pool path and that my driveway's position made it the obvious solution. The proposal included removing the red diamond pavers and replacing them with standard HOA-approved concrete, at my expense. She even had the nerve to suggest that I should feel grateful for the enhancement to my property value. A special board meeting to vote on the motion was set for the following month, giving me exactly 30 days to mount my defense. I knew I needed expert assistance, so I retained Jessica Bennett, a property attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. Her first step was to obtain all relevant county records concerning my property lines and the original subdivision plans. What we uncovered was more promising than I could have imagined. Not only was every inch of my red diamond driveway clearly within my boundaries, but the developer's original blueprints revealed that they had deliberately designed the lot with extra space specifically for an enlarged driveway. The official county surveyors' records confirmed that the HOA's common land stopped a full 3 feet before my pavers started. Jessica also found something revealing in the HOA's own bylaws. Under Section 12.4, any board member who knowingly submits false claims regarding property boundaries or pursues baseless legal action against homeowners could face removal from the board and personal liability for associated legal fees. Armed with this information, we hired a licensed surveyor to produce an updated property map, complete with precise markers. The surveyor placed bright orange stakes along the exact boundary line, making it impossible for anyone to feign confusion about where my land ended and HOA property began. While awaiting the surveyor's official report, I meticulously documented every instance of Barbara's trespassing, using my security cameras. The footage revealed her crossing my driveway at least twice a day, often pausing to take phone calls or converse with neighbors while standing squarely on my red diamonds. One particularly damning clip captured her telling another resident that, once the board approved the easement, she intended to have a bench placed on what was currently my property. The sheer audacity was astonishing, but it would prove to be her undoing. With the surveyor's report in hand and under my attorney's guidance, I made my next strategic move. Over a weekend, when Barbara was out of state visiting her sister, I contracted a professional fencing company to install a decorative wrought iron fence along the true property line. The design featured an automatic vehicular gate at the street entrance to my driveway and a smaller pedestrian gate secured with a heavy-duty padlock where my land met the pool path. The entire installation was fully permitted by the county, complied with all relevant regulations, and violated no HOA restrictions on fence, height, or style. When Barbara returned on Monday morning for her customary pool visit, she found her cherished shortcut sealed behind iron bars and an unyielding lock. Her reaction was instantaneous and explosive. She called my phone 17 times within a single hour, leaving voicemails that grew progressively more frantic, accusing me of erecting illegal structures and obstructing community access. She threatened to have the fence demolished, to sue me personally, and to make my life miserable until I submitted to her demands. I preserved every message and forwarded them all to Jessica, who was assembling an impressive dossier on Barbara's conduct. By midday, Barbara had convened an emergency HOA board meeting for that evening, fully expecting her colleagues to rally behind her campaign against my fence. The gathering took place in the community center, and the room was filled to capacity. News of the dispute had spread rapidly, drawing many residents eager to witness the unfolding drama. Barbara took the podium, her face flushed with fury as she railed against my alleged deliberate blockage of community property and my antisocial actions. She insisted that I had built the fence purely out of malice and that it barred residents from reaching their own amenities. When my turn came, I presented the surveyor's report, the county records, and the developer's original plans. With calm precision, I explained that I possessed every legal right to enclose my property and that the HOA had never held any legitimate claim to my driveway. Then Jessica took the floor and delivered the decisive strike. She laid Barbara's motion to seize my land side by side with irrefutable proof that Barbara had long been aware of the accurate boundaries. She produced emails from 2 years earlier, in which Barbara herself had acknowledged the correct property lines. During a separate dispute with another homeowner, Jessica outlined how Barbara's actions amounted to harassment, repeated trespassing, and possible fraud. She further reminded the board of Section 12.4 in their own bylaws, emphasizing the personal liability they risked by endorsing Barbara's unfounded assertions. The board members grew visibly uneasy as Jessica methodically presented the evidence. Upon her conclusion, the board president, a mild-mannered retiree named Arthur Sterling, called for a short recess. During the break, I observed the other board members clustering together, casting occasional glances toward Barbara, who stood isolated by the podium, with her arms folded and her foot tapping in irritation. When the meeting resumed, Arthur cleared his throat and declared the board's decision. They were voiding all fines levied against me, rejecting the proposed easement outright, and issuing a formal apology for the harassment I had suffered. But the residents were not finished. A woman named Jennifer Lee rose and moved for a vote of no confidence in Barbara Higgins's leadership. She detailed the abuse of authority, the fabricated claims, and the legal exposure Barbara had inflicted on the HOA. The motion was seconded without delay. And despite Barbara's indignant objections regarding procedure and required notice, Arthur permitted the vote to go forward. When the ballots were tallied, the result was 87-12 in favor of removing Barbara from the board. I watched the blood drain from her face, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. As the implications settled over her, the consequences followed swiftly and gratifyingly. Barbara was stripped of her board position and received a formal cease and desist letter from the HOA's attorney, warning her against any further harassment of residents. She now had to detour an extra 3 blocks to reach the community pool, passing directly by my red diamond driveway each time. The constant reminder of her defeat must have been intolerable, because she shifted her morning swims to 5:30 a.m. instead of 9:30, presumably to avoid encountering me. I adjusted my gardening schedule accordingly, ensuring I was out watering my roses whenever she hurried past, always offering a friendly wave. The final flourish arrives 2 months later when I spotted construction materials piled in Barbara's driveway. She had applied to install decorative pavers of her own, seeking to replace her bland concrete. The new board, perhaps harboring a touch of retribution after years under her thumb, rejected her request, citing that the proposed design would breach the neighborhood's uniformity standards. It was the very same rationale she had once wielded against me. When I saw her standing in her driveway reading the denial letter, her complexion shifting through impossible shades of crimson, I decided to add one small enhancement to my property. Beside my gate, I mounted a modest brass plaque engraved with the words, "Private property, verified twice." Sometimes the sweetest revenge is neither grand nor theatrical. Sometimes it is simply a daily reminder cast in brass and red diamonds that you attempted to seize what was not yours and failed spectacularly. Barbara's legal fees from her unsuccessful campaign exceeded $15,000. The HOA board also invoiced an additional $8,000 to cover their attorney expenses in shielding the association from potential liability. Her outburst upon receiving the bills was so vehement that 3 separate neighbors phoned the police for a wellness check. She stood in her driveway brandishing the invoices and shouting about injustice and conspiracy until Officer Mitchell politely recommended she continue her demonstration inside. And to hear more stories just like this, make sure to subscribe to HOA Conflicts for more.